Okay, welcome once again to the Clutch Creek. We are live again. I am your host, E.G. Wakamatsu, and my co-host down below me. Say hello. No, he doesn't want to
Hello.
say hello. Okay, so we have Greg Merriman and our special guest, Mitch Sanders from Victoria.
The real Mitch Sanders.
The real Mitch Sanders. Okay. Just want to check if
We have audio.
there's audio
Yeah,
coming
we
through.
have audio.
We
Yeah,
do?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
We're getting audio.
Alrighty. So to start off with is drift news. Locally within Australia, I don't think we had much news happening. I think we should probably do a similar thing that the Maximum Driftcast guys do, where they have a discussion group and they get fed things through there, just so we don't miss anything. What do you think?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like, so the Maximum Driftcast guys have a group where people sort of talk about stuff, and just so say there's an event happening that we just don't know about because we're not connected to the right people.
Yeah,
they
well,
can be
the guy
advertised there.
sitting over here sends me messages every so often, being like, "These are names of people who podiumed. Get that on there." So here's a good one. But yeah, we should start doing that.
There's actually somebody who's starting up. I'm not too sure whether it's specifically drift events or whether it's all motorsport events, but an Australian thing where anybody who's running an event, they contribute to this site so that everybody, or this page on Facebook, so that everybody can just look at one place to see it. I'm not too sure what the name is. I think somebody asked the DCA page asking for the listing of their stuff to go onto it, but I can't remember the name of the page.
That happens quite often. There's already several existing pages like that, and they sort of
just fade away.
They come in, they come on pretty strong. They start to try and get dates, they put a calendar, and for various reasons, they sort of die off. One was that, like I spoke to the guy, he kept putting up events and kept researching. He did it for about 2 years, and he kind of didn't get any feedback to say people were using that information. So he thought, oh, well, no one's looking at it, so I'm just not going to bother. Because they're not commenting, they're not liking. I mean, they are a little bit, but it's nowhere near the amount that people are actually using that information. So
the reach is and the feedback.
Yeah, it was barely anything. So it's oh, this isn't working. But and so in other pages, though, they just got bored, or they just life took over and they just can't do. They've got no time for it and other things like that. So there are a few, and so that's why I think we should, if we have our own one, then we can kind of probably moderate the discussions on there. But anyway, back to the news, I guess. We had a very big weekend overseas with drifting. There was a lot of events. So to start off with, there was the first and second round of D1 GP in Japan, in Osaka. There was also King of Nations or King of Asia in Thailand.
King of Asia.
Yep. And there was also the BDC, the British Drift Championship, run by the IDC guys. Apparently they had some new rules, but I'm not too sure what they were. And also it was the Nürburgring Drift Championship or something like that as well. That was live online. But I didn't get to watch. Sorry?
I didn't catch that one.
Yeah,
it was a German one.
I only caught the last sort of 15 minutes of it. And then I didn't really, even though I got it, I didn't really pay attention to it. So I only saw them finish their run and then had the podium, and that was it. So, but yeah, so probably.
Where do you want to start?
I guess one of the big notables from coming out of D1 that a lot of people would have seen was the fact that Daigo wrote his car off pretty badly on.
Yeah,
I think it was during Friday practice.
Don't know. I've gotten conflicting information about that. So I know a lot of people have been spreading the information that car's a write-off. That car's one of 25.
It was supposedly that he just couldn't get the parts up there in time, and there was potentially something not right. But then he also put on Facebook, he translated it eventually into English, so it made sense that I think the other Corvette that he was going to use at Autopolis is the bonnet hump is too tall for their rules, and would mean a whole new bonnet and a whole new intake and all this sort of stuff. So that's going to put that out of the next round of D1 as well, because it's all custom parts. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly with Daigo's car, but yeah, it's the other Corvette, or his main Corvette, isn't eligible for D1 currently, so he's got some work to do on that car.
I wouldn't say the one last weekend was a write-off, but it wasn't repairable for the weekend.
Yeah, I just don't think he's got enough of the parts, because it's all HGK, carbon Kevlar and all that. I would imagine that he doesn't have a whole bunch of them sitting on a shelf ready to be put onto a car to make it probably past tech and all that sort of stuff. So I would imagine that's what put him out for the weekend. It is scary when you think that they run back-to-back events on the same weekend, and it's something that would be cool to sort of do here, because you can sort of get more rounds and get more competition in on a weekend. But then when something like that happens, you cost one of your big drivers a whole bunch of points because they just don't have time to get cars back out on track. But
if you ran 3 rounds and you broke at one of the rounds, you've lost a third of the thing. If you run 6 rounds, double rounds on weekends, and you break at one of them, you've still lost a third of the championship as far as your ability to earn points.
Yeah, I guess it's a fair call, but it still makes your points gap a whole lot bigger. And I guess as long as it does weigh in sort of that way. But yeah, I like the fact that they do run the two rounds each weekend, or I think for a lot of their weekends.
Yep.
As far as I'm aware, they
run. Yeah, a lot of them are 2 rounds. There's barely any that are just standalone single rounds from memory. I can't actually remember the schedule. So
yeah, but I'd almost rather halve the points for a round, but run 2 on a weekend, so that you do have a double chance to win, or if you do get knocked out early, you can get your act together for the next day and have another crack at it.
So yeah. Anyway, with Daigo's car, some people were saying it was a write-off, and I don't think it was. From what other people were saying, they were saying that it was just not repairable at that time. So it seems like there's a lot of misinformation going on.
Many cars though.
Sorry?
The cropper on that wall. He was one of many people that ran into that wall.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Was Kumakubo also put up a post? I think that you read a Japanese English translation on Facebook. I'm not too sure how that came across, but I also read it as well, and not in the English to Japanese Japanese to English translation on Facebook, but I used a different tool to listen to it in Japanese, and it was interesting to hear his comment. So he was saying that there's all this extra safety equipment that is in the car, but if the course isn't safe, then what's the point? If the course isn't safe for the driver, what's the point of having a safe car? So,
because they went to FIA specs and they have harms devices and stuff like that this year.
Yeah, but like I'm not too sure if I'm getting the point across correctly. But he's kind of saying you're making the car safe so it can be crashed, but then the point is you shouldn't crash, like you shouldn't be in that situation.
The organisers are making the track safe.
Yeah, so
they're putting it on the driver, doing any effort themselves.
Yeah, so they're saying that if you crash, then it's fine. You've got all these roll cages, harness devices, but really those things doesn't really prevent the crash. It just means that when you crash, you're going to be safe. So yeah, he's saying that the thought process is wrong. I think he didn't say it's wrong, but he just said, you're
just burning money. Like, all they're forcing the drivers to do is burn money, and that's a stage that FD went through for a while, and and then people started changing cars to be able to suit that. But even this track is beyond, the way it was laid out is beyond what an FD track would even expect from drivers going head on into a wall the way they were. But I'm imagining the smaller concrete blocks, the way they had them set out, considering a little bit further around the track, they had the longer, heavier concrete blocks. So I'm guessing they were using them as, they were purposely being able to be moved so that it was similar to a tyre wall that would sort of catch the car but not stop the car instantly. But yeah, it did look pretty ugly.
I'm not sure
on the stream.
I would have put tires in front of those concrete blocks.
But I would imagine the FIA doesn't want tyres there, because if you sort of went in at this, I guess even the way Daigo went in, Daigo tried to drive out of it and ended up getting sort of the wall pushed back and sucked the car in a little bit.
Yeah.
In a tandem run doing that sort of thing, he would have, if he didn't go in by, say, another 15 centimeters, he might have actually driven out of it, where a tyre wall would have probably grabbed the front of the car and just sucked him in hard. But a tyre wall in some of the accidents were over the weekend would have just shot that car out in front of another car.
Or it would even launched it up in the air as well.
Yeah, and that's
it's
when...
really hard, yeah.
But that's when people die too. Like, we've seen it in V8 supercars where nose of car on driver's door contact and stuff is what has killed drivers. So let's not even go there with trying to avoid putting drivers in those situations, considering, we do have a big target on doors.
I think,
yeah, a bit scary, but
yeah, another talking point was the DOS system. Yeah. That was pretty big discussion about that. I can understand it, and I still think it can be improved, and it'll probably be the most unbiased thing, but that's just my opinion. So
here's what I saw with DOS from the weekend. So I watched last year with DOS and was trying to wrap my hand around it. One of the things that I saw on this weekend, and Alexi talked about some of the criteria for DOS, and it looks at vehicle speed, and it looks at a car holding a constant angle, so not changing angle much.
Yep.
And what you'd see is drivers intentionally on the chase leaving a big gap to the car in front, because on the chase they can cut the line, they can go at a higher speed than the car in front of them, and because they're not correcting because they're pushing up close on a tandem, they can run a more controlled angle through the course, and they can score better not being close to the car in front of them. And that's the biggest part of it that as the way that DOS operates at the moment, that I feel it takes away from drifting, is that you can get rewarded for not being close.
That's kind of right. You can. It's generally, I'm not sure, but my understanding of it is, if you stay back and you leave that gap, you can match their score. It's really unlikely that you'll get a higher score.
It does work well. Yeah, it does work well as far as a drag race is concerned. If the lead car takes away from you, and then for the rest of, and then after lead car initiates, then your car initiates. If you do the same through the course, then it nullifies that gap that you got left.
That's right.
In the run-up. So
yeah.
I take it that was their intention and what they did there, but I want to see proximity. I want to see close.
Yeah, well, that's why I think Alexi did mention it. Some of the drivers intentionally leave a gap, so then because they know the car's faster, when they come in, their speed will be quite a lot higher because they're chasing, and then if they close the gap, then that means the rear car was faster than the chase car was faster than the lead car. So then they will score more points that way. So at some point of the course, they would have to have caught up, and that's when they get close. So that's why you saw them sort of dive in, like just towards the end of that sweeper.
But I prefer to see the snap
at the same time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I guess also with that, Connor's asked if DOS measures wheel position. I don't think it has anything to do with wheel position. It's all just done GPS off.
Pretty sure I've
the angle of the car.
Yeah, we've had this discussion with Connor before, as in our group in Canberra.
Yeah. But yeah, there was a few times where cars were making big front wheel corrections, but the angle of the car continued until the car settled, and I can't imagine that would have much impact on the GPS on those cars.
I don't even think the GPS works.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the GPS is not accurate enough to actually get a position on the track. Like, some of the GPS units can get in between, like, they can get like within 15 centimeters, but I really don't think their GPS is that accurate. I think they can only see roughly where they are on the course, but not like.
But surely they could still get it. Yeah, but surely for a proximity, like they wouldn't be able to get it. So if you laid it out like a FD or a DCA where we've got exact set clipping points, you wouldn't be able to get that accurate, but you'd still be able to get a point measurement between the two cars. For a tandem battle.
Because if they're close, they can overlap. Like they can switch positions.
No. Yeah. But I'm saying I'm sure that they could still use some sort of positioning sensor to say how far away they are from each other, similar to the line.
Not like GPS,
similar to what they use. Yeah, like what they use for V8.
Yeah.
Yeah, or what they use for V8 supercars for those timing modules and all that sort of thing when they're jumping curbs and doing all that.
Did you ever see Mad Mike's event? He ran a street event in Christchurch about drift shifters, and it was like a pinball thing. He had sensors off the side that measured your proximity to the walls and the spin around points and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was
cool. But electronically, would it be better to go to sensors on the track rather than sensors on the car?
But Daigo went really bad in that event. So, and then people believe that Daigo, do you think Daigo's a good driver? Do you think he should score really high? Because I'm pretty sure he ranked very, very low.
Well, it was a very different kind of event. It was solo car driving. It's much like the question that came up last week about an expression driving. It's somebody going out and driving by themselves and scoring points towards winning in that manner. It wasn't a tandem competition.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the drift shifters thing was also that you could link combos and stuff together. So the smarter guys would have been able to link them up and would have worked out what a high scoring run was, where some drivers wouldn't have cared and just gone out there and thrashed anyway. So
yeah, as it progressed, the drivers picked up on multipliers and stuff like that, and the points they scored got a lot higher as the day went on.
But FD also did the sensor thing for a few years, where they had I think Oracle Lighting must have been sponsoring the series at the time. Remember, they had the clipping points in different spots, and when the drivers would drive close to them, the lights would change color. And I think they started discovering that sometimes, even though drivers were basically right on top of it, they wouldn't trigger. So they took that visual away so that people wouldn't be like, oh, the light didn't go off, so you don't get points for that.
They used to rely on the information from radar guns on their entry speeds as well. I'm not sure whether that's a thing anymore.
Yeah, that was partly because that was part of their criteria, but they pulled that out of their criteria. But I think if there's a big notable change in speeds, because a lot of the teams still use guns, then some big question marks start to come up. BDC, I didn't watch a whole lot of it. First round, they made a bit of an. I can't even think of his name now.
Who's this?
McKeever. Dwayne McKeever, whatever. Somebody's going to give me shit for the name of it. His qualifying run was absolutely sick. That guy put that car on an absolute dime and placed it everywhere it needed to be in the BDC. I can't remember
the name of the bloke who qualified second, though.
Yeah.
He was a Pro-Am driver. He qualified first in Pro-Am, he won Pro-Am, and he qualified second in the Pro Series and got through to at least the top 8, I think.
Nice. Yeah, there's been a few guys. The Shanahan brothers have dropped out of that series for this year, as far as I'm aware. I think Connor won it. I was
going to ask where your boyfriend was.
I think Connor won it last year. Yeah, I think Connor won it last year, but as far as I'm aware, Jack is going to drive Drift GP, which is the one that Peter Vinchek and James Dean have been driving. So doing sort of
Europe,
Poland, more Europe-based series, as well as focusing on IDC. So I think people think those guys are made of money and sponsors are jumping all over them, but yeah, that's all their program can afford at this stage, I'm pretty sure. So I think they're traveling a little bit more together if that's what they're doing. I know they're definitely doing IDC, and I know Jack's definitely doing Drift GP. He's got a new car for one of the series, and then he's got the S14 for the other series. So, that I guess that was a big notable absence from the BDC this year, but it still looks like it's a fairly high quality event. And they made a sort of interesting press statement yesterday about how people think that the series has got huge money and all this sort of stuff going on, but it really is just a bunch of volunteers, a lot of volunteers, and then there's just the administration guys who are sort of being able to pay themselves. But yeah, motorsport is run by volunteers in all capacities, even your V8 supercars, DCA, all that. There's not really anybody making all that much money from it when it comes to helping run these events.
Well, the BDC, they had Pro-Am and they had Pro as well. So the Pro-Am had... now, I'm trying to think. I think they're still allowed to use semi-slicks in Pro-Am, but they had rain on the Saturday, which really... changed stuff up. So there was some very simple, you'd look at them and say they were street cars that made it through to the top four. There was sort of two pro-looking cars and two cars that looked like street cars. All of the top four were BMWs, E36s or E46s. One driver actually went and put on road tyres in an attempt to gain traction in the wet, but it was changing patchy conditions, and that unfortunately didn't work out for him there. And then they got stuck for time and they actually had to run Pro-Am finals on the Sunday morning of Pro before getting into Pro qualifying. But they had a dry day all Sunday for that side of it. So good to see a lot in the commentary too, with the judges and stuff talking about and trying to educate the crowds to a good lead allows a good chase.
Yeah. Definitely.
The crowd aware of what might have seemed like a win to somebody because of proximity on a chase and a gap on a lead was actually due to the inverse. It was the better lead that allowed the good chase and a poor lead that created the poor chase, and that's why the loss happened there. So they seem to judge and have similar expectations of drivers to what we do. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that track also, from going back to where you said the Pro-Am guys sort of were able to step up, I think Rockingham, with the layout that they were using, is one of their pretty stock standard UK drift sections where they have, but I think the way they've got it laid out and run, if you watch Monkey London or any of those guys on YouTube, that's one of those ones that they're using fairly often. So yeah, that's sort of a staple in British drifting as far as I'm aware. So yeah, it's definitely good
I've seen it on Monkey London. I just haven't
associated it.
Was set up, it looked like a completely different complex.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's exactly the same place. So yeah, and then yeah, I guess today media day for FD started going on. There's a notable loss in a lot of wings. Forrest had his wing off. A few other drivers have been told to take wings off. Any track that it looks like this year that wings can make contact with catch fences or concrete walls, drivers aren't allowed to run GT style wings. I think you're allowed to get away with your Rocket Bunny type stuff or your single pieces, but anything that's
no more Matfield Pac-Man on clip 3 or clip 2.
No, none of that allowed anymore. That's all out. So that they all look a little bit funny with that one, but media day, I guess we found out yesterday during Max Driftcast, you're only allowed to run it if you've driven Long Beach before. So there's no traditional Thursday practice, but if you've driven Long Beach before, then you're allowed to do media day. Yeah. I'm guessing it's because the local news and it's sort of more free agency, as well as the fact that passengers are allowed. And I think it is, even though the speeds were a little bit lower than what most people think. It's only 100 kilometers on entry, but I think the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of walls and it's just a way of, I think, keeping people safe. But yeah, you think if you could get a Pro 1 license that you should be able to string a lap together, especially now that getting a Pro 1 license is harder than it used to be.
So really, the only people that had stopped driving would be those that came up from Pro 2.
Yeah, and some of those Pro 2 guys would have done the Motegi Super Drift stuff that happens. They run the invite only. Yeah, top 16 or top 8, whatever they do the weekend after. There are guys that are running Pro 2 or even Pro Am guys who get to run that event. So it only really does stop a few guys from doing it, which, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm sure eventually that rule will change once the standard gets a whole bunch higher, because they didn't have Federico, I think that's his name, with the Ferrari out there and things like that. Yeah, you'd think you'd have guys like that out there because it's just cool.
Yeah, that's been getting lots of media as well. So it's a bit weird that he's not there, and that's a kind of a funny rule, because that means that people that have had experience will get more experience, and the people with zero experience will still have zero experience of that track.
Yeah, but I guess we'll see what happens this weekend, and there have been a few rule changes, but I guess we'll see how it impacts.
12 laps as well, I think, of practice total.
Yeah, 12 laps. Well, that was the talk. Those rules weren't necessarily set in concrete, so let's wait and see what comes out of this weekend and see what happens, and then we can sort of talk on that a little bit more next week. So. Okay.
Cool. So are we going to get this our topic for tonight?
So let's talk to our guest a little bit before we get into the topic we sort of want to pick his brain on more. So we have with us the Real Mitch Sanders. So he's had a bit of misfortune with his 2Js lately and his Bitcoin investments.
Bitcoin's tanked. It's all over, man. I'm ruined.
And do you not put oil in your 2Js?
No, Toyota reliability doesn't need it.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Just run genuine air. That's good.
We should probably explain that there are two people called Mitchell Sanders in the drift scene. Actually, I believe there's potentially another one in Victoria as well, but just not as involved.
Or is that yours? Oh, do you have another alter ego that you're like, oh yeah, there's another Mitch Sanders. He's got this like rad car, and it's actually you.
It's a 33 Skyline. We wouldn't get too carried away.
Oh Jesus! So he's got the Titanic.
But it's. I probably don't help the cause in that some people don't realise that we're two different people.
Yeah, so you keep commenting like it is you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was a post on High Tech, somebody complaining about the entry fees. And somebody said, oh, Mitch Sanders will be the only one who can afford to drive. And I'm like, nah, Bitcoin tanked. I can't afford to drive. And he's like, oh, just sell one of your 6 houses. I'm like, yeah, or my 8 cars. And I think this guy legit thought that I was the other Mitch Sanders, and I was I probably shouldn't have fed that, considering it's we are different people and we have different mentalities when it comes to drift and some other things. So I don't know, one of us needs to change our name online. Maybe we'll have a drift battle, and whoever loses has to change it. Or
at this stage, all you'd have to do is show up with a running car that does more than a lap.
Well, I don't have a drift car at the moment, so he's kind of almost doing better than me. I could beat him in a foot race.
So I met you just over 12 months ago. You were judging Drift Challenge Australia National Series.
Yep.
I hadn't met you before that. You've now stepped away from the judging role after a couple of years of judging, and you're now helping commentate DCA. So, sort of, where did you find your start with that? We've spoken to EG a little bit about his, but what got you involved with the Australian drift scene, I guess.
You want the whole story from the start of me getting into drifting, or
give us a bit of a rundown of why we know you, and then give us a rundown as to why you started drifting.
Shit, I don't know why you know me. So I was much like you. So other than the ice skating and the leotards and that, but I followed drift quite a lot. 10, 12 years ago when it first started, Drift Australia and stuff like that. I watched as much of it as I could find and that, but I wasn't involved as such. I didn't drive. I didn't know people or anything like that. And then I got to think now, it might have been like 5 years ago. I'd been four driving. I just did a trip up Cape York. I got home. I still had some money left over, and I knew that Winton Mitsuri was coming up because I'd followed VicDrift online. So I went on eBay and looked up manual and rear-wheel drive, and scrolled through the options, and there was a Corona, and there was a Rodeo, and there was a Gemini, and there was an RA65 Celica for $700. I'm like, all right, I'll have that. So bought that, put some coilovers in it, welded a diff, put an exhaust on it, and turned up at a Mitsuri for, in C class or D class. I'm not too sure how low it was then, and proceeded to understeer and spin out and whatever else all weekend, and I was hooked. I haven't been four-wheel driving since. That was it. I thought I was going to stack the car that weekend, part it out. It was just a thing I did and come and go, but here we are 5 years later, and it's such a strong passion of mine. So many, like I had 30 friends on Facebook before I got into drifting. Now I have people pop up and I got 130 friends in common, and I've never met the person. It's changed quite a bit. So
what actually got you into drifting originally? So you said you started watching Drift Australia and all that sort of stuff. What was your introduction to drifting?
I'd always been into motorsport as a kid and cars growing up and stuff. I was into rally quite a lot. And then I remember high school in the library, and there was this video footage that somebody had, and I found it recently as well. And it was shot from up high, looking down at like a red and a black S13 drifting. I don't even know the name of the course. It could have been high up on the bank on school course or something like that. But like that was the first time I saw drifting. And then I can't even remember, the flow of content that I saw afterwards that had me into it. But like just reading the magazines that were around at the time, anytime there was a drift car article in it and stuff like that. So, and I don't know, like you get into a car and what's the first thing you want to do with it? You want to make it slide around. Like that's just what it is. And then for many years, like first car was a VS Commodore Auto. I only had it for a couple of months. I had it for a few years as a daily, but I only had it for a couple of months before I bought a Celica GT4. And that was a project car that I had for many years, but all-wheel drive is super fun grip racing, but it gets really boring. And I wanted something more exciting, and that's when it came to this Celica popping up and giving it a crack. So and then I did it about a year and a half doing every VicDrift event I could afford to do. And when I wasn't driving, I was flagging or helping out wherever I could. I'm a strong believer that, everybody in the scene, you were saying before that these series and stuff, they run on volunteers. Motorsport runs on volunteers. If you're going to be, taking advantage of it as a driver, at some point you need to put back into it in doing some volunteering. And I guess that's similarly what I've come to do now that I'm not driving. I'm still involved. I'm still trying to contribute to it. And then, so there was this series coming up that I heard about put on by Luke Fink, which had this tyre rule. And well, that sounds pretty. I got a low-powered car. Well, I wasn't actually thinking of driving it because I was just a noob. But so I helped a friend of mine, Lee Pidwell, get to the first event. I got to his workshop Wednesday afternoon before the event, and he had a shell. And we put an engine in it, we put the suspension in it, we got it tuned, we got it lined, we borrowed a trailer, we got it all set up, we left at 10 o'clock on Friday with minimal sleep, and then drove all through the night. Like, I slept in a truck stop parking lot on the ground to get a couple hours sleep before we got up and did the last of the drive to round one, year one of DCA. And then to Lee's credit, he spun on both of his qualifying runs. so all that thrashing was, it was sort of for nothing. But and then I parked the Rodeo on the hill. I sat up in the roof basket and just had my mind blown with the driving that I saw. I'd never seen driving like that in person. Like Nakamura was there, Stewie Bryant, Pidwell when he was allowed to drive because he didn't qualify and stuff. Just that level of driving, the backies, the tandems and stuff, blew my mind. I was hooked. Like, this series was amazing to me. And that was a really good event, that first one. There was a whole bunch of Queenslanders that came down and stuff. And then a couple of months later, the next round's coming up. And Lee's already sent his car over on a truck. So we were just using the Rodeo to tow a cage trailer full of tyres. And round 2 was at Tailem Bend. And Lee's like, oh, they don't even have 32 entrants yet. You should just enter, like you're going to qualify in a national comp. And I'm like, that sounds stupid. So I went and got my car and found every tyre I could and loaded it up. And because the Rodeo was already towing a trailer full of tyres, I drove the car over there with earmuffs on, and like I had a sore back and I had, kidneys punched from stiff suspension and roll cage and stuff. The exhaust fell off when I got to the track. And DCA ran a different sort of qualifying system back then. They had an initial qualifying sort of thing, and then they did a one-lap wonder sort of thing, which sorted the final rank. And in the initial qualifying sort of things, the judges really dug what I was doing out there because they put me as the number 1 qualifier. And then when I got out there, I potatoed in the minute to, the 1 lap to qualify sort of thing. But that was an insane event. That was like 3 days driving there. And then after that, Calder Park, running the high bank line, going off jumps on the back straight, meeting and hanging out with like Chelsea Denofa. When I first met Denofa, there was a bunch of drivers that qualified for the top 32 standing on a bank, all talking. And I thought that Finney O'Hare was the guest driver because he was the one with the accent. I didn't even pick up who Chelsea was. I didn't follow it enough at that time. And yeah, that was heaps of fun. And then what was after that? I can't remember how it went after that, but a bunch of different stuff. Best result I had was Australia Day weekend. I finished 4th, which was great. I got to do a victory skid in my little Celica.
Double loser.
Yeah, I lost twice. It's I've said it before. It's the only driver that loses twice on a competition weekend is the guy who finishes 4th. So I shouldn't have earned that burnout, but I was having it anyway. And then, so yeah, I did about 2 years of DCA, and I did 1 year where it must have been the round 1 where I finished 4th. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to put a lot of effort into it this year, and went and did. I would have missed Tassie, but I did Calder and I did Rayleigh, and then after Rayleigh, I went up and did Archie, and I checked out QR, and then at Christmas time, I went to X Park, and like I did as much drifting as I could in 1 year. And then coming into the next year, I just didn't have the budget for it anymore. And I'd been in a chat group with Luke and a few of the other drivers and a bunch of the officials and stuff for a while. And Paul Austin Aussie was looking at getting into driving that year. So they needed another judge. And I'm like, I'll give it a crack. I can't guarantee I'll be any good or whatnot, but I want to still be around and involved in these events. I don't have the money to compete. I want to contribute. This is a way for me to do it. And then, yeah, we get out there, and we got E.G. and Marky are the other 2 judges, and somebody has to do driver's briefing. They weren't necessarily going to be the best for it, so I had to find my loud voice and stand up and do that. And so, yeah,
I don't think you had to find that. You've always got a loud voice.
Trying to tell me to shut up, eh?
Oh, I'm just saying it's very high in volume.
So yeah, did that for 2 years, and that was great to still be involved. And then coming into this year, I wouldn't say necessarily the opportunity came up for a commentator. We haven't really had like a solid commentator all the way through. We haven't done a whole bunch with live streams and stuff in the past. I feel that DCA offers a really good event for drivers, if not the best event we can offer to drivers. And where we're lacking is feeding back to the crowds, and like the support crews that are there at the track. They also want to know what's going on, and what the results are. And similarly, getting the live stream going as well, and giving it out to the people who can't make it to the events. And then also we had Michael Solomon, who'd been a big helper behind the scenes and every event that he could get to with DCA. He isn't able to come out as much anymore because he's got deployment through work in the Defence Forces. So there's other tasks that need to be done in race control and stuff that need to be helped out in. So I'm helping Luke Fink with everything that I can there and other things on the day. So when I'm not on the microphone, I'm generally doing other things with race control and that. So yeah, that's
well,
where
even
where I'm at.
even last year you were double stinting it a lot of the time, and you were on the microphone when you weren't judging. So still remember hearing your voice for most of the time when you'd come flying past, and it would be your voice, not Luke's or whatever. Luke would sort of do the battles, and then as soon as your role was over, you were the one still sitting there. EG was crunching the numbers. You were on the mic, and Marky was off sleeping or something.
Yeah, well, it was Mount Gambier last year, where I jumped on the microphone a bit when I wasn't doing other things, and I seemed to be able to do it okay, as long as I had some notes in front of me to know what to babble on about. And then it got to the end of the day and people had to tell me to shut up. The crowds had left. I was talking to myself. So, and yeah, I then sort of made an effort to sort of get some practice and jumped on it elsewhere where I could. And then for the King of Nations big entry comp in Queensland last year, I was judging and commentating simultaneously. It was a bit easier with a big entry comp compared to a regular competition. I feel I'd struggle to commentate and judge in a regular competition because judging just takes so much attention to do. I wouldn't be able to talk for the run or for the few minutes afterwards where I'm taking notes down because I'd lose track of where I'm at. But as a commentator with coming from judging, I can look at stuff and I can give the crowd some of an idea of what was good and what wasn't. But similarly in commentating, I haven't paid as much of an attention. So what I give over the microphone isn't going to be as solid as what would be coming from a judge.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing as long as it's not the delivery of that statement when you say it isn't a be all and end all, but you're pretty, from what I've heard and when I'm not in the car, you're a level head. Yeah, and you're a level-headed guy when you're saying it, where other series people get caught up sometimes with what the commentator has said, but you're sort of a little bit more calculated than that, and I think your commentary on that is pretty good. I'm not much of a hype man. I'm not going to get massively excited and start yelling and stuff when I see a run. I'd prefer to work more on the facts and what I've seen and present that and what I know of the drivers. Yeah, and I guess while we're on it, did that sort of that change of roles? So I guess you said going to your first DCA event, the driving was sick. Then you ended up in the driver's seat. Then you ended up in the judge's seat. Now you're looking at it purely from an entertainment point of view again, but trying to feed information through, but with a whole lot more background information now. How have you felt the series has changed, progressed, or stayed the same?
Let's see. Well, like I said, the first round blew my mind, and I still go to rounds and see stuff that blows me away. Like the last round last year and the Cash Kings event, like the final round of DCA, like at night, tandem runs on door, sparking off the walls and stuff. It was crazy. Like there's a great photo of that. Like it's on the drivers' chat as a background, but yeah, photos and stuff don't do that night justice. I mean, there's some events that are a bit flatter than others, and others that are ridiculous. But I mean, there's been a change in the drivers as well. When a lot of the drivers that are out now, I never drove with, and the drivers that I did aren't around anymore either. So, I mean, it's almost like it stayed the same to an extent because drivers that were at a real high level aren't driving anymore. A next lot of drivers has come through and they're at a higher level. To see where it is overall, it's sort of, I couldn't really pick it. I'm still pretty impressed with what I see. I can't have been too impressive for people to watch me driving, so there must have been a low point there between me watching the first one and me driving that can't have been great.
Yeah, but I guess, as you said, it's a driver's event. It's not necessarily it is a spectator's event, but you've got to be there to be a spectator. It's not something you can necessarily follow all that easily from the outside without being, sort of being there in person. But I think that's something that Luke is looking at working on, and with you now in that supporting role, trying to push for that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything crossed, that eventually we'll get there with that. I guess, so you said that, and this is sort of moving towards a topic where we wanted to speak about with VicDrift Round 2 next weekend, or this weekend coming.
This one coming, yeah.
Yeah. So you said you did a lot of VicDrift events in sort of the 2 years, in that 2 year period, but VicDrift is a fairly cemented group, I guess I would say, from what I've seen online. Sort of run us through what VicDrift does really well that the rest of the country is sort of, I guess SA does good things too, but VicDrift just has it together and has it working. It's a well-oiled machine and it seems to pull numbers with a good culture. Give us a bit of a rundown on what you've seen through there and what you're continuing to see that their formula's right and what they've got working down there that everybody can sort of take away.
Well, VicDrift definitely had to build themselves up to where they are now. When I first got involved, there used to be a lot more emphasis on like having members and running members days and stuff like that, and discounts for members as well. But they found the members days not to be profitable for them. They wouldn't get as many entrants. So since then, they've moved to just days that are open to everyone. And they used to run a lot more Winton as well. And then there was sort of a period of time where Calder was sort of not obtainable, just with ownership changes and stuff like that. And then as that became available again, it's right on the edge of Melbourne, so you always get strong entrants there. The Matsuris used to be, probably still are, huge for them. Like, they crash the website with people trying to enter Matsuris, normally about 120 spots for those 2 days of driving. So I can't say what's really got them as big as they are. It's probably
consistency.
Say how we're looking at the national series, and we've talked about a bit in the past how we lost Drift Australia and we lost ADGP and stuff like that. VicDrift has been going for, someone would have to tell me, 15 years, something like that, like all the way through. So it's had the ability to keep adapting, keep growing, see what works. And I guess technically nowadays they do have a recipe. They do have a formula. They're towards the end of the year. They're already booking out all their dates for the next year. They have an event, maybe slightly more than once a month, so once every 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. And that's really that's the capacity that they can probably run as far as volunteers, and especially for the board members and stuff, their ability to put together events and stuff. So they're running as many as they can possibly do, and they're generally filling. They also run their drift skills, which is a beginner entry level thing, which now runs in conjunction with one of their drift days. They run it, so they'll have drifting on the main track, and they'll have drift skills in the Thunderdome, which is a great entry point. I did a drift skills. I think I'd done 2 Mitsuris before I did drift skills, but I thought I'd give it a crack and just see if there was anything else they could teach me with some of the experienced drivers that have been around for a while. And then, like, with the competition sides of it, 5 years ago, the competition side of it was struggling. Like, they'd have 3 rounds in a year and they'd all be the same layout at Calder Park on the national circuit, the run the wall layout. And you'd see the same handful of drivers at the top. You'd see the Ahuli brothers. You'd see the Insane Drifters, Prosnik. He sort of started driving and built his way up there as well. And I can't really remember exactly the way the tyre rules were then, but they did allow some pretty grippy tyres. I know years back, drivers using R1Rs. So, but tyre rules weren't a thing, all those years ago. So it was struggling. They weren't getting entrants, and then I can't remember how many years ago they went to bringing in the tyre rules. So they do, much like DCA, width of tyre by weight of vehicle, and then they have a band list for tyres that say they're X tread wear but are actually known to be better. So, and I can't remember whether it was the same year that they brought in the tyre rule. They also tried out the Jaeger system for a year. And round one that year was like 80 entrants, 60 or 80 entrants. It was ridiculous. And the Jaeger system, it has some pros and cons. And there were a couple of the pro drivers, the guys that have been around for a while, the A-grade drivers that didn't enjoy the system because it meant they sat around most of the day. But for the beginner drivers, it gave them a lot more driving. So that's probably...
Yeah. Sorry, maybe just quickly go through the Jaeger system because I know it's been covered in
Maximum Driftcast,
but just so people know, if you can roughly give them an idea of why.
So the Jaeger system seeds drivers and groups them into, I believe they're groups of 8. So you'll have your top drivers in A, and then you'll have B, C, D, etc., depending on how many you have. And then the way it works is you don't run qualification. You have your seeding that you work to. The first battles that you see is, say we're going A, B, C, D, will be C and D battle each other. So it's the lowest 2 tiers battle each other. So you're going to see a similar skill level in those battles. And then the winners out of that, so that 16 becomes 8. That 8 then battles the B group drivers. So they've been good enough to get through that. They now battle the B, and then that's 16 drivers that become 8 again. And that 8 then take on the A class drivers, and then they battle out for who wins. So
that's the tournament system.
That's the tournament. Yeah.
You also mentioned as well.
So the judging side of it was another component, and that was a matter of there'd be an independent lead judge and an independent chase judge, and then there'd be the third judge or head judge that interjects when needed. And the lead judge watches the lead run independently and says it's good, average, or poor. And the chase judge watches the chase and judges if it was good, average, or poor. And good, average, or poor has a certain amount of points weighted to it. So there's a higher point weighting for being a good lead. However, if you have a poor lead, you actually award points to the chase car. So it was designed to make judging somewhat more binary, but also to ensure that there's an emphasis on a good lead.
So then a good chase would occur.
Exactly that, yeah.
Okay.
But I guess that system didn't really stand the test of time. But do you think it helped change the attitude, even worldwide, of some of that? Because I know Aaron Loisy from Lone Star Drift came out and looked at wanting to run a system like it, but sort of ended up going against it. But around that same time, there seemed to be a swing, almost worldwide FD sort of similar sort of thing, as well as IDC, BDC, where it did start to change people's attitude towards that. where there used to be a lot of games played from lead cars, but now all of a sudden there was a big emphasis put on you must be doing good leads. If you do a rubbish lead and the chase car does rubbish too, if they can blame you as the lead car, you're just not going to be rewarded. Do you think, as much as that system's now, still doesn't exist, do you think it helped play a role in that change of attitude?
I think it came about at the same time as that change of attitude that was happening elsewhere, and this was the way that Chris saw a way to enforce it. Lone Star did run it for a round, and they ran even more drivers than VicDrift, and because it was such an efficient layout, they got a crazy amount of battles done in a day or in an amount of time. The first round when VicDrift ran it, because they were learning a bit, and it was a new thing, it dragged on a bit and took a while to do. And that's part of what burnt some of the drivers that used to compete. The A-class drivers, they got there, they drove their practice at midday, and then they weren't on track to battle until after 6 p.m. So that's sort of a con against it. And the other thing is you could probably pull the judging system side of it out of it with and maybe find that useful to implement independent of the battle tree that it runs through. I feel that the battle tree potentially is what let it down a bit more. The A-class drivers having to wait so long, and similarly with the seeding system, if you came in at the start of the year as an A-class driver, you don't have to really perform all that well through the year, and you're still going to finish quite high in the championship because you started in the top 8. So I feel it hurt the championship way a little bit there, in my opinion. But the battle side of it definitely had merit. I was watching and doing a regular sort of judging while they were doing their sort of judging, and there was one instance where there was a poor lead and a poor chase, and they were independent of each other. However, because of the way the point system work, like as in there was a poor lead, the chase was poor, but the chase wasn't poor because of the lead doing badly. They were their own problem. But the chase got awarded points towards them because of the way that came out, and under the regular type of judging, the driver that got through probably shouldn't have, and the one that lost saw it from the previous judging style and was sort of put out by that. He couldn't see how that was a just decision. However, that's where the third judge is meant to come in and make decisions as far as that, to view it as a whole and give feedback, and they can push points around as needed there.
Okay, so it's still it's not super technical the way FD sort of got through that 2014 time when it got almost too structured that you had no wiggle room for incidences like that. There was still enough wiggle room that that third judge could have come in and stopped that from happening.
Yeah, exactly. That was the intention of what the third judge would feel in that position. So a lot of the battles run just off the feedback of the lead and chase judge, and it's only the obscure instances where the other one has to come in.
Yeah, okay, but there was that room for that to happen where that result could be chucked out and a proper decision made on it, not based off just that technical judging system.
Yeah.
But in that case, it didn't happen.
It didn't, yeah.
But from what I saw of that battle and how I felt it should have cut, the result should have been, and similarly for the other. But in saying that, there's a good chance I wasn't in driver's briefing.
Yeah.
And
No, understandable.
I'm a strong advocate. If you weren't in driver's briefing, then you don't know the criteria and you can't make a call on that. I do try to get to all the driver's briefings, but this was 3 years ago now, so I can't recall.
Yeah, and sometimes they won't let you in as well if you're not a driver or some sort of official.
VicDrift is pretty lax with that. You can rock up to the things, and because spotters and all the rest, they're all allowed. Like all the wives and girlfriends are there for the briefing as well, just because there's nothing else to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm more just talking because a lot of the series started to get really technical with their calling, and they did start putting themselves in odd situations where, hey, this cone fell over, so we have to give you a 0, and because we put it in our rules that we're going to give you a 0, and then 2 wheels off track meant a 0, but the other car pushed me off the track, and but now you lose, and it just things got too messy. And I was just wondering if they put themselves in that situation, but it sounds like they sort of avoided that.
I feel it came after a lot of that stuff happened. So back when there was all those instant zeros and stuff like that, all of that was going away at the same time. There came more emphasis on a lead run. So I feel that's where it came in. Like one thing we didn't touch on was King of Asia that was last weekend. I feel that King of Nations and King of Asia are still a bit backward. They're 4 or 5 years behind because they still have those instant zeros.
Yeah, and even D1NZ has a few like that as well. With Matty Hill had I think we spoke about it previously, where he sort of got checked up a little bit by the lead car and cut inside a little bit and dropped a wheel or something like that, and it was enough to cost him a battle, and it just kills the spectacle. And I think that's, as you spoke about earlier, like the reason you started watching drifting and then got involved with DCA was because the spectacle was cool. It wasn't as soon as it starts to get super technical, it's not interesting. The BDC press release little thing that they spoke about was, will drifting ever really be mainstream? And they sort of think, no, it won't ever really be mainstream. It will just be people who want to watch drifting or people who get taken out to an event sort of fall in love with it. And as soon as it gets super technical and gets too hard to understand, people just will walk away from it. Where if it's just super cool and super sick, people will watch.
Yeah. But
What judged events are there that would be considered to be mainstream?
Well, or I guess now what's becoming mainstream is just snowboarding, things like that are becoming more mainstream. Anything that's sort of in X Games has always been fairly mainstream. But I guess
if
not
I
to
turn the TV on at 2:00 on a Sunday, it's not on there. Those events aren't.
Yeah, definitely not in Australia. In the US and stuff, things like your snowboarding, there's more chance of that being on TV than say skateboarding.
Is that because they have more people and more channels?
Yeah, I think
more snow. Even.
Yeah, well, and it's a more accessible form of sport, right? I guess for us, for some reason, swimming ends up all over the TV. Yeah, how many people competitively swim?
Oh, I know, but I think it'd be like the more accepted type of sport. It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then how V8, well, actually no, they're called supercars now. They are the accepted type of motorsport, or the premier in Australia.
But supercars is only where it is because the people who own the series drive in the series.
Yeah, but look at if that's the case, then why are there so many spectators? Like you look at Bathurst, the whole hill is full of people. I mean, for one reason or another, like they might not be there to.
It's a drinking event.
That's what I was going to get to. They're still there at that event.
More open bars. Events.
Yeah.
You go to Bathurst and you got to go there early and bury your beer in the dirt, so you go up there and dig it out. The big day out, you go and drill holes in the walls at the stadium so you can put your drugs in the wall and then go and collect it once you're inside. That did actually happen last year. So I guess you just need to build a culture like that where you ban something and give people the opportunity to sneak stuff in, and then they can go and take it and enjoy the event, I guess.
Yeah. So I still don't understand the point of BDC's media release, because it's not really that different from any other sport that's, I'm going to say similar, but that means like you could cover like things like snowboarding or even
figure skating.
Sorry, figure skating. Even
such
shooting,
release
like
by
gun
BDC
shooting.
is instrumental to themselves.
Sorry?
Like, to something like that, what's that going to say to people that want to sponsor them?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That was an odd one. I'm going to have to reread it and sort of... We'll digest that one and maybe speak about it again at some stage, because, that was actually a really interesting one for it to come out. I wonder if that was a knee-jerk reaction to a few comments that were made, and sometimes,
that's
need
why
to sit down and just...
I think when we were talking about it, just outside of this, I said I feel like I'm missing some more information out of that article. There's something in front of that I said, well, I don't know, I didn't hear it. So, but yeah. Anyway,
yeah. So back to VicDrift. Just looking at the calendar. I found it interesting that this year, and I only just took note of it. I took note of it earlier in the year and then forgot about it. That if it's not a competition, it's a Matsuri. So all their events this year, other than their Members Day in December, are all 2-day events, whether it be Calder or Winton. And the first day is a round of the competition. The second day is a round of practice.
So in last year they did it quite a bit. So the last 2 or 3 years, whenever they'd have a competition day, they'd have a practice day either before or after. Something that they've experimented with in the last couple of years is running the comps on a Saturday. They can run a late night on a Saturday, or it also helps. They've had New South Wales and they've had South Australian drivers before, so they can cannonball over on the Friday night or Saturday morning, because some of the events start middle of the day and run into the evening. Run an event into Saturday evening, and then you've got all of the Sunday to get back home again. And then this year, I guess why you're seeing the calendar fill up is because they've got 5 or 6, maybe 6 rounds of competition this year.
Yeah, 6 rounds this year,
which is good. It's great that VicDrift is in a position where they have that much support and demand for their competitions to be there. I feel to run that many, it suddenly becomes difficult for drivers to be able to afford to compete in that many. To be able to be competitive for a full season becomes more difficult. They have, I believe they have drop a round. I don't know if they'll have drop 2 rounds because of how much they have. But yeah, it gets expensive to do it when it becomes that many. I feel 4 to 5 is probably the sweet spot. And similarly, for drivers that are interested in giving the state series a crack as well as the national series, again, it becomes difficult because there's 6 plus another 3 or 4 for the national. That's 10 weekends in a year. That's taken up quite a bit. That's one a month.
Yeah, but is there much riding on the VicDrift season? Do they like money wise or anything like that, or is it just the prestige of being VicDrift champion?
It's just a matter of being the champion. I think there was a small amount of round prize money that went out at the last round. I'm not completely across what the prizes are for them, but I mean, it's arguably the longest running competition in the country.
Yeah.
The biggest fields in the country, and potentially with the crowd numbers that they get and the money. So they have the money coming in from the crowds and the events. Similarly, crowds from their practice days and stuff like that, the money they make from there, they go back into these competitions, and that sets up all the scaffolding for the staff and the race control and the judges to operate from, the sound systems, the food vans, the giveaways. They'll throw out T-shirts to the crowd or whatever else from the sponsors that they have. So it's due to my involvement in, say, DCA, I wouldn't have the opportunity to drive DCA because I'm doing other things. If I had the vehicle and the money, I'd be driving competitively. I'd be trying to compete in VicDrift.
Yeah, so for sure.
And you guys are out of the state, and there are a lot of guys that are. And what have you heard from the outside, looking down to Victoria, on what's on offer here? From what I've seen from other people, they're saying, what VicDrift is offering is great. It's crazy. I really want to get down there and compete.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely an attractive one. And I guess some of the attraction is the fact that you can go down and do a one-off round or a couple of rounds, and you don't really feel like you're missing out on anything. Yeah, you can't really place all that high in the championship, but unlike a DCA that's giving away mega prizes in, being the overseas trips, you need to be at every round to do it. Where for a VicDrift, you can go down, do a couple of rounds and you sort of pick the ones that either fit in with your timeline or fit in with your budget, and the layout looks cool because, they're running the 6 rounds on different layouts. As far as I'm aware, every round is a different layout between the 3 circuits that they use. So that really is attractive. And then the fact that you can do the practice day the next day if the car's still in one piece. So it does make the trip worthwhile. The one-day events or even the comps that sort of take up the 2 days, unless there's bulk driving time, it sometimes can be unjustifiable to bother. Like when we ran Super Drift last year, that's what we had locally, and it's, you run it a bit like Speedway. You show up, you sort of pump out your little competition and you go home. It's not a big deal, but it sort of works for the guys who are within 2 or 3 hours tops and can be back home, at the end of that day. But if you're going to make the trek to go to something like your VicDrift, or you're traveling more than a day to get there, you want bulk time for that, I guess. I'm in
the far east of Melbourne, and it's a hair over an hour for me. But there's half the Melbourne's is in the west, and they're 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes from the track. There are some people that are 5 minutes from the track. Like you can hear the drift events from their backyards. So it's close and it's affordable, like you say. It's like somewhere around $300 to enter. They run the tyre rules, so you can run on cheap tyres. There's a couple of guys that drive their cars to the event. They don't trailer them, even though there's the cage rule. And there was a lot of uproar and stuff when the cage rule first came in. A lot of people pushing back and whatever else. But what ended up happening is that sort of an industry formed behind it. So when it first came out, you had to pay $1,500 to get a cage, because there was only 3 cage workshops in Melbourne. But a whole bunch of entrepreneur drifters went and got themselves a pipe bender and a notcher and a welder, and you can get cam spec half cages for $700, and on drift sales now they're even less.
Yeah, as long as they're not welded in the middle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say about R32. But yeah, I think what you said was right. It did actually put off people from New South Wales or around where I am from going to Victoria when that cage rule did come into play. But there were still other people I knew further up in Sydney where they kind of had a cage rule because of Eastern Creek. And they were interested in doing all the rounds because there wasn't very much offered in Sydney at that time, or the other option was just the figure 8, which some people prefer the high speed tracks that are available in other states.
But I guess
it was a bit of a gamble when VicDrift did it. Like they sort of to a degree pioneered it in drifting in forcing that rule or putting that rule on. But they gave everybody a year's notice. They said, all right, this year to run passengers you have to have a cam spec cage, and then going into next year to be on the track at all you have to. So it gave lots of people time to prepare. And we're now
purely off their own back. Or is that a pressure from AASA or somebody like that? Because who do they run their events under?
They run through AASA.
Okay,
AASA is based at the Winton track.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain the directive that they told the people is that it was an insurance thing. However, there are other events that do run AASA and don't run cages. So the other side of it could just be a safety thing. That's what they felt that they needed to do to have a safe event. Yeah. I don't think they really had any bad incidents which led them to sort of knee-jerk and put it in. It's something that they came to their own decision to do. And now we've seen a flow-on where there's other states that are starting to bring it in, South Australia and stuff like that. And then it's debatable as to whether or not because Victoria did it first, other people have started, or whether it was something that was going to come anyway and they were just the first to do it.
I think it was something that they just started, they did first, and it was going to come anyway just because of all the incidents that have been happening since. Like you said, nothing happened before and nothing's really happened now besides that 32 that I don't even know if that actually helped him or not. Well, no, it didn't help him at all because
with the side intrusions.
Yeah, it broke,
Yeah.
and it's still the guy.
Well, that's not even part of the regs. You only need a half cage.
Yeah.
That stuff that he had was additional.
Well, in Sydney, at Eastern Creek, where they do have some cans official, I've turned up to an event where they said you can't drive. You've only got a half cage. You need to have a side intrusion, but that's not in any of the regs. So that was a little bit annoying. But
it's probably arguable that in drifting, the side intrusion is probably more important than the roll bar.
It could, but I think you could avoid it in certain ways. So one is, I think we've talked about this before, is the death gap. So if they're driving together, and they're only meters apart, they're only going to hit the relative velocity would only be like 5 k's, which is
so there's viewers that don't know what death gap is.
Yeah.
The situation, and it's funny that it's a phrase that's become sort of national, is it's very difficult to convey to your insurance to say that cars next to each other are less likely to hurt each other than cars far apart. But if 2 cars are next to each other in a tandem and somebody potatoes, you just spin together and you're already touching, so there's no impact. Death gap is when there's a car leading out and the next car has 3 or 4 car lengths behind them and is drifting as well, and when the front one stuffs up, and if they say the back end hits a wall, they're going to come to a stop pretty rapidly. That next car is going to come in with that speed difference, and that's where the biggest stacks I've seen in drifting have happened. When there's a distance between cars, but trying to tell your insurance that cars far apart is dangerous, cars close together is safe, is very counterintuitive.
Yeah, but I guess some of that has also come from poor releasing from track officials and things like that too, and just poor track logistics where they've released cars too close together to give the officials time that if a car has spun to wave flags. They haven't sent it as a true tandem. They've sent it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 next car, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 next car.
Death gap is more a true tandem where there's where there's a difference in speed. It's not a matter of a car released and then another one released later. That's poor marshalling is a separate issue to death gap.
And I guess it also comes out of the drivers as well, because I've seen an incident
forward
where
vision.
Yeah, the cars spun in front of them, and then the next car is coming along and driving, doesn't really slow down, and then suddenly he kicks the clutch and then drives into the crash the spun car. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you saw the car spun.
And that's happened too many times.
Yeah, so it's partly attitude, and that's probably causing the insurers to look at it thinking, we need to get these guys need cages because they can't take care of themselves, so we have to take care of them.
Yeah, well, that's why Luke started using the signs on a pole, because he figures if you stick a pole out in the middle of the track, drifters are more likely going to stop dead rather than risking hitting the stop sign in the middle of the track than looking at a flag waving and being like, oh, it's only a flag, we should be right going past it. It's a bit more of a forced thing, or they could just throw spike strips out or do something like that if people keep doing dumb stuff after flags have gone out. But I guess VicDrift leading the way with that, really was just a natural progression when it came to that. And as you guys say, when it comes to tandems, it does sort of make sense to have that going on. And when you look at a car as soft as EG's 32,
my car
even a half
soft.
K.
No way.
Yeah, no.
Do you see how many hits it took?
Yeah, you said the B pillar in them is soft as hell though. So even a half cage in a half cage in your car could save your life in a tandem, because you've got your side intrusion bars factory through your door, but that half cage sitting. But they do not come with side intrusion inside the
clients. When you brought in a car from Japan, you take off the door skin, you'll see a piece of blue steel with bubblegum welds, and that's the side intrusion that gets added when you import a car. So this car's getting around here with hollow doors.
Yeah, and some people change to hollow doors as well because they're wider. Because sometimes they put this huge big I-beam inside the doors. Like, and so they changed back to the ones that came in uncomplied, and then they have lighter doors, so it's a lighter car. But yeah, it'd only be an issue. I think it's more of an issue with driver attitude. So if you were doing, because with my car, I'm generally closer to people. So if there is an incident, I just hit them, and that's it. It'd just be like a little sort of car park dead kind of thing.
Provided you can keep up, mate.
Hey, I kept up with you and your 380 kilowatts or something.
Right, keep going. I'm just stirring you up.
Okay. Anyway, I think getting back to VicDrift. What kind of VicDrift? As you know the high tech kind of. I don't know how to put it. So they're starting their new series and including Winton as well in 2 of the rounds. So has that affected you? The people in VicDrift, and do you think people from VicDrift are not going to enter, or they will enter, or they just don't really care?
I actually haven't seen any discussion as far as how that's likely to affect the VicDrift rounds. Now that you mentioned it, I haven't even had a look to see when the dates are of those 2 high-tech rounds and where they fall in relation to VicDrift comp rounds, because if there's a clash there, then you're definitely going to lose out on drivers in that instance. I don't even know if VicDrift are likely to have a comp round at Winton.
No, they do. They have one this year.
They do? Okay.
Yeah.
Winton is a very difficult track to run comps on. It doesn't really lend itself to it in its layout. You either run, there's the front S's or the back M's, or the last time they ran a comp there that I can recall of, they ran from the sweeper and then stretch a double apex into the first corner of the M, and then I think it finished after the first corner of the M's. I don't think it flowed into the next one, which was pretty good. I enjoyed seeing that one. So as far as what High Tech will do, I feel
High Tech is supposed to be doing 1 round. Well, the talk was 1 round doing the front section and 1 round doing the back section.
Okay,
on the 2 visit. Yeah, basically. And yeah, looking at VicDrift, they've done it as separate. I've just lost my calendar. I think every round is a different layout. So they did the round 1. They did the backwards down the bottom. We spoke about in one of the episodes where they ran that back bottom section.
First time in 10 years that layout had been run. So up over the crest and then through the chicane, and then that short straight to straighten out before what would normally be turn 1 when running the national circuit. So that was pretty cool to see. The elevation change is quite rapid and fairly high as well. Like comparing it to Gambia, I'd say it would be a greater fall in a similar distance.
Yeah.
So definitely unloaded the cars quite a bit there.
But into a really that corner, that direction is really slow, right?
Very few drivers sort of really got it right. When you did get it right, there was some good flow through those 2 that right left before the straight section. But you're committing blind up over that crest with a bit of pace, and there were a few drivers that I feel they got caught up on this cone that was like sort of an initiation cone. It was something that the judges wanted to see you drifting, initiate your drift before, and they took it as an outer clip, which it wasn't. So the drivers had hit that, and then by the time they got over the top of the hill, they were already floating towards the inner apex of the first corner when they should have hit the outside of the course later. And when you did that and got the flow right, it definitely worked. So that was just more of a challenge for the drivers to work with there.
And then round 2, I think they're running that backwards again down the back straight, but cutting through the cut-through section.
I'm not too sure what the name of this layout is called. I just know it as the reverse layout. So they start on the back straight of the national circuit, and they swing left where you'd normally go straight, or there's like kink it straight a bit further before there's that hump. So you swing left and you come back towards the front straight. So they're sort of running, if you're running the short course of Calder, they're sort of running that backwards. And then as you come onto the front straight, you then hook back the other way and start heading in the correct direction for the flow of traffic. So there's outer through there, then back through towards the wall, probably not out to the wall because the line gets a bit awkward and stretched if you try to push them that far. And then they come back and start going over the crossover. So it's a good one to watch. You spectate up on the mound there. You can see the back straight. You can see the whole course all the way through. It's definitely a challenging layout. That switchback as you come through the first curve and then swing back around to start heading back up the front straight. It's very tight, and it's very easy for drivers to get wrapped up in how close they can get onto the lead car's door at that point. And what they do is they cut a bunch of the track inadvertently to do that, and the lead car will flow through and take off, and the chase car gets on the door, and then all of a sudden the lead car flows away and the chase car's stopped. So that's the biggest point of difference and the difficult point I've seen in that track. Justin Gruner last year was nailing it from practice. He top qualified and he won it on his birthday. He went on to win the championship for the year, and then he's now top qualified and finished first at the first round that's just gone already. So he's on a bit of a roll. And it's interesting to see that he did well in that instance where you shouldn't get carried away with getting up on a door when there's an opportunity. Because I remember his first ever competition at DCA where there was an opportunity to get up on a door and he did it at the wrong time and stuffed up the transition, and he lost his first battle in competitions. Bad for him, good for me, because I got through to the top 16. But and that was back when he had the 32. So since then he's moved to the 33. He's been doing national series, and he's killing it in I guess at the moment with what he's done in the Vic round. So that's the event that's coming up this weekend. Starting, it's another evening event, so under lights. So rock up at like midday for practice and that and qualifications, and then battles will start later on the day, maybe 4 o'clock or something like that, and run through into the evening.
I think they normally have a live stream for the whole event, don't they?
They do. They run a live stream to YouTube. I'm not too sure whether it goes to Facebook or not. I'm always at the event, so I've never watched the live stream.
Yeah, I know at least I saw the battles last time. It was actually pretty good. There's only one camera though. And I think the commentators were sitting next to the camera, so I could hear the commentators.
Yeah, they had one camera. They had one camera that was panning.
Yeah.
So it was one person with the camcorder essentially that was hooked into the setup. So the people that you probably heard talking was me and everyone else that was on the second level, and the judges were up on the top level. Oh, unless they had a microphone up there, I'm not sure.
I think it was, it was Matt Russell?
Matt Russell was doing scorekeeping, so they must have had a microphone up top then.
Yeah, I think I heard his name during that, so wherever they were sitting.
So for judges for round one, they had Lee Pidwell, they had from Insane Drifters, Papa, and then they had returning for like the third or fourth year, their long-time judge, Tony Church. So I'm not too sure what the judges panel is going to be in the next one. I believe Ken Long or Ken Leong from WA. He did a round. He did the final round last year as the third judge. Previously, they had Stewie Bryant. So I think I've heard that he might be coming back to be one of the judges. So I'm not too sure what the judges panel will make up for the next round.
How do you think he is as a judge? Keep in mind he listens to this, so you can say good or bad, doesn't matter.
Ken?
Yeah, he listens to this.
Final round last year was the same weekend as we were in Queensland. So I missed that, unfortunately.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I want to see him drive in person.
Basically shit.
I've always wanted to see him drive in person. I've never seen him get out there and do it. But apparently you got to go to WA and check him out in one of his sprinters or something.
Yeah. He does day street lamp inspections, I think. Or used to.
We've been informed with the VicDrift judges for the weekend. It's Tony, Lee, and Sean. Sean, the Pest Power, who last week was throwing us a bunch of questions. So
probably a bunch of questions we've missed.
Yeah, no, we've been pretty good. A few people getting in.
Sean's out at all the events, and Sean's judged. He stepped in and with Lee, one of their other judges, when they joined me at Calder Park
last year. Yeah, I would have qualified number one if those guys weren't judging.
Sean's been around. Well,
no,
he's old as fuck, around forever. Like full lock days. So he's definitely well experienced as a driver as well. He drove DCA, and he's driven VicDrift rounds in the past as well. And similarly, he's a driver without a track car at the moment, but still wants to be involved in the event. So yeah, it's great to see him helping out.
How come? So does every round get a guest judge, or is that just sort of a special thing every now and again?
I think their intention is to have a full panel that's the same. So last year they had Tony Church, Stewie Bryant, and they had shoot, I've forgotten his name. Tall bloke, can't miss him. Drift Life Australia, Joss. They had Joss as the third judge. So they had them for all the rounds except for the last one because Stewie was up in Queensland with us. And that's when Ken came in. And I think their intention at the start of this year is they wanted to have solid panel through the whole year as well. But it's just things come up and these happen. So that's why they've got some other judges in as a result. But I believe Tony and Lee are probably going to be solid all the way through the year.
Okay, cool. How was Stewie judging? I didn't really hear much of him except for the first round.
How was he judging?
Yeah.
The judges' results are an average of 3 people. I couldn't pick out what his results were from others.
Okay. All right, so you weren't sitting with them.
No, generally at VicDrift there's... I try to be up in that area, but too many people try, and eventually everyone gets kicked out. So I don't intrude too much up there. I'll hang out when I can, but the rest of the time I'll leave them to their thing. And then at times as well, I'm spotting or helping out drivers. So
right, okay.
I can be.
Yeah, cool. All right.
So I just got hit with a personal message, and somebody who's not really into the competition thing was like, I don't understand why people want to compete anyway. I won't throw the person under the bus. But I guess VicDrift, why do you think that so many people do want to enter comps? Out of anywhere in the country, there's...
Oh, hang on, I'll put this back to you another way, or to this person who sent the question, but I'll ask it to you. What's the worst thing with drifting in Australia?
I'm not even sure what you mean by that. There's just a lot of bullshit.
So there's a lot of people that come and say, "Oh, this is the worst. This is the reason why drifting in Australia. This is the worst thing about drifting in Australia." In my opinion, it's exactly that sentence that's the issue. Saying what they decided to be is the worst thing about drifting in Australia.
Yeah,
drifting is an expression, and different people are into different things. I didn't used to be into comps. I didn't care for them at all. And nowadays I'm quite involved and I really enjoy it and I love watching it. If comps is your thing, do it. If it's not, don't hate on it. Similarly, style cars. Some people are into building a car. That's their expression is the look of their car. They might not drive as hard as everyone else. Well, not everyone else, as other people, but other people choose to express themselves through their driving, their aggression and that. And neither of those is wrong. That's just a different expression of to do it. To be going to a comp and hating on halfway hangs or hating on a comp because you're going to halfway hangs, that's detrimental to it. Drift is many different facets. and even a comp, any given comp doesn't suit every driver. It's a set of rules that a bunch of drivers have to adhere to. So that's not going to suit everybody either. And that's why you can have DCA and you can have high tech, because they're different styles of comps. So anybody who says anything else is wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah, his statement wasn't necessarily about wrong. He was just more questioning it. But I guess, and this is where I was trying to lead to with it, is do you think the fact that somewhere like Queensland lost competitions for so long, they're finding their feet again, but the way Luke sort of got Archie going is sort of why he got a decent amount that first weekend of them running the comp. This one seemed to work. The couple that he tried to run before that had low numbers. VicDrift has always had sort of that culture. Do you think that staying has
recently had that culture? They did struggle in the past.
Yeah, but do you think that's what's made it attractive is the fact that it sort of stuck strong through those shitty times, and all of a sudden they dropped down low numbers, and now then they started jumping back up into the 50, 60 entrants where nowhere else in the country is getting entrants like that.
I mean, part of it could be the mentality, like the group mentality that people think comps are bad, or everybody else said comps are bad, so I won't do comps. My mates aren't doing comps, I won't do comps, or whatever else.
Yeah, but this is exactly what I mean, though. So when you're sitting on the mound at a VicDrift event, that's everybody, right? Like there's almost everybody who's a who's who of the Victorian drift scene, whether or not they're competing or just don't currently have a car, is there spectating, right?
There's an amount of drivers that turn up that drive the practice days and stuff that don't do comps, and they get there to watch it, to check it out. I don't know. Maybe I think it's a culture shift. I think back then, years ago, there was the thing where people didn't like comps, and nowadays people do like comps. I can't really say what changed that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying so much a change.
Is the improvement in the rules and improvement in driving skill. It's a spectacle to watch, which it might not have been in the past.
Yeah, and I guess part of the anti-New South Wales towards competition stuff is because of what we have had to offer of late. With it's either unreachable.
It's what New South Wales drivers want competition to be. And that's what they don't enjoy. A different style of competition, they'd be open to it. However, because they're so jaded from that style that they don't like, when something new comes up, it's hard to know, is this actually going to be better? I won't go straight away. We'll wait and see where it happens. And then, it stumbles, it can't get its foot in, and it falls away. And it's like, I'm glad I didn't turn up for that then. So,
yeah. Yeah, and this is my point to more what I was leading to, is that sort of thing, and I think that's where VicDrift has been able to keep itself strong through that time. Even it'll be interesting for me to see what happens with South Australia once the Benz is open, and once they try and get a more solid foundation going with the comp. And I know they've got the JDMX Park series sort of going, but I think the numbers even with that at the first round struggled. So. Everybody's trying to model.
The other one they run up at X Park, like other people come into X Park and they run it. Scott Miller's done well there in the past. Can't remember what the events are called. Somebody will chime in on live stream what they are. But
they ran a DCAA comp at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a state series there as well, but I don't think that's the one you're talking about.
But they're running a high-tech state series or something like that.
High-tech round having a one in there.
Road Ride is what they run out there. That gets good crowds okay crowds considering where it is, but good drivers and stuff. I'm not exactly 100% on what it is. There's a competition aspect of sorts, but it's a good vibe. People really enjoy heading out to that.
Yeah. I guess,
but it's definitely really very different from stadiums that they used to run out at Tailem all the time. So,
yeah, and even your G1 at Malala, like that.
Is that coming back this year?
I think from what I saw online that most of that hasn't ended up happening, but I think once the Benz is open and everything's a little bit more settled, then hopefully SA Drift, it seems like they're doing a lot of work. They've got a stand set up this weekend at the first round of...
Solomon stepping back from DCA, he's putting more effort into DSA and definitely trying to push to try and get competitions going there. He was really hoping that the DCA South Australia Series, that was his baby. That's what he was hoping would really grow and carry on, but they only got those 2 rounds out of it last year. So he's really pushing to try and get that happening in South Australia.
Yeah, maybe that the DCA SA thing was 12 to 18 months too early before they sort of had the chance to get everybody who's claiming to be building cars, the same as the lull we had in New South Wales with the Wakefield thing of, as soon as we get this track back, then we're all gonna build cars.
The people that have sold up until Tailem comes back, or
and we had the same with Wakefield. Once Wakefield reopens, we're gonna
all that stuff again. All that stuff regarding Wakefield, that was not true. People didn't have cars. They didn't go. Like, the people that complained and were the loudest were the people that rarely went to the event. Like I went to most of the Wakefield days. I wouldn't say every single one, but I think it was a large majority. And I never saw those guys there that complained. Like, the ones that were so loud, they'd only tell once every 2 years, and then the track was closed for less than 2 years. And then we're back on there. It was
a year and a half, not even.
Yeah, and so
but did VicDrift go through something similar with the lull at Calder? Didn't Calder shut down for a while, and it was just Winton events, really?
Yeah, that was sort of before I was in it, sort of right when I came into it. Might have even been, so I came in like right at the November Matsuri, and then into the next year, I think is when Calder started coming back, because I think I did Matsuri, Drift Skills, and then I believe I did a Calder event. So, and they would have had probably at least 2, if not 4 in that year. So Calder had come back by the time I got in. But yeah, there was a period of time when they were running Winton only, and now Winton is I think a Matsuri, 2 Matsuris.
2 Matsuris and a round of comp.
Yeah, from my point of view, it looked like VicDrift kind of left Winton alone for a little while as well.
There's more involved. There's more going on than just a matter of what track they want to run at. A large amount of it comes down to price,
money. Yeah,
and similarly, there are definitely drivers that lots of people are willing to travel to Winton. It's a nice, flowy, open track. There's the BP straight does have a wall that's got grass before you hit it, but many people still manage to find it. But compared to Calder Park and the bowl wall there, which claims a lot of cars, it's a relatively safer track. You're less likely to damage your car. So there are people that are happy to go for that. And similarly, Winton, being somewhat central to the state, does pull a lot more rural drivers, and you'll get guys down from Orby, Wodonga, and a little bit over the border as well for those events.
Yeah, I know some of the Canberra people go there occasionally as well, because it's almost possible to do it in a day. So if we leave at sort of 3:30 a.m., then we can get there for driver's briefing in the morning, and then leave at 5 and come back here at around 10, I think. So yeah, it is possible for us to get there as well. But normally we stay overnight at Benalla, which is pretty fun. There's usually a lot of drivers camping out there. Sometimes they have parties that they shouldn't have the night before the event.
The pleasure park. The pleasure park is used to be the place to stay. I don't know if that's still a thing. Drifters probably have
I think a reputation banned from there by now.
I've woken up to people having fights at like 3 in the morning and stuff like that, and because somebody stepped on somebody in the dark, and people rocking in.
Well, they just still.
I need to go to a Winton Matsuri. Clearly.
It's like every drift event. It's the party in between is just as important as what's going on at the track.
Yeah, that's it. I looked up high-tech dates for Winton around VicDrift dates, and they don't seem to clash too badly. The proposed Winton date for high-tech, the first one is the 29th and 30th of June, and there's Matsuri's only 2 weeks before that on the 10th and 11th of June, but then there's almost a month between that and the next round of VicDrift, and there's a month beforehand.
Also between Matsuri drivers and comp drivers generally. That's that different vibe.
Yeah, and then the next one's the 26th and 27th of October, and that one might impact numbers because VicDrift is the weekend before that at Calder. So, yeah, that'll just be interesting to see sort of what happens with that. But again, I think most people tend to stick to a series, and if you don't feel like you can get something out of a series, then most people won't spend that extra money to go and do something else when they can. If you're just driving it for fun, like I think 99.9% of the drift population in this country is, only a few people are sort of doing it where some of their stuff or a majority of their stuff is covered in cost. Most people are earning money to pay for their habits. So, you want to have the most fun and bang for your buck, I guess, and not wanting to spend the big money. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see what sort of market that grabs now that it's sort of sitting right between the two states. And the fact that
there's a handful of drivers that used to travel all the way up to the Peanut for
look,
rounds out of Victoria. There's probably
Aaron,
there's at least
Dewar
and Prosnick. And
Prosnick didn't do much. I would say Finney.
Prosnick had a bit of a break for a while there. But he recently came back.
Mo did one.
I know they did the Winton round. I'm not too sure if they went up as far as doing the figure eight.
Mo did. Mo did the first round of last season and then stopped coming back up. Finney has always been, before the 33 was stolen, I think he religiously came up, and then Aaron sort of started doing the same thing 2 seasons ago. But I think they were your two main stables.
Does Bonnie go up?
Yeah, Bonnie did a couple, but I think he also sort of pulled back from it because it's a big trip for what is a speed round of drifting, really.
And probably not massively suited to his car. Like, that car would love a high speed track. I've only really glanced at the Peanut track when I've been over there for World Time Attack. I haven't really seen how small or tight that'd be to drive in a drift situation.
Should be fine. You should be able to drift it. It's
there's plenty of.
Is it third gear or is it second? Like, I know Greg drives there, so
second. Greg drives in second. I really want to click third on the straight. So
I'm a pussy, but I only drive in second. Yeah. It took me a while to learn how to actually shift when I drift.
Yeah, SR must have struggled with second gear at QR.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Nah. I'm just sitting on limbs the whole way.
Oh, that's why I can keep up with you.
Yeah, that's it. I was only driving in second.
With 380 kilometers.
That's it. I was in third the whole weekend. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Don't give me too much edge. But I guess is there much else going on in Vic? Anything in the background happening, or anything that you know of that's noteworthy, or is it sort of they're doing the same thing?
Victor's been around for so long, it's so cemented, and because they have that event nearly every month, and they have such a following and stuff, it hasn't really been possible for other series or event runners to sort of kickstart anything because there hasn't been the demand there. I feel at this point it's finally come to where the VicDrift events have become saturated and there's demand beyond that. And now it sort of presents an opportunity for other things to come in. So there's a couple of guys that will hire out, say, the skid pan at Winton and do their own days there. There's Wizards, Ben Wizard Autobody does some events out there. I don't know if Mac 10 they're a club or a group of guys. I know they've driven events there. I can't remember whether they've held them. Primal Garage used to run stuff back in the day. I'm not too sure whether they've run anything recently. I believe they've done at least once Winton's Skid Pan Day. Something that happened maybe 2 weekends ago was Willabisu, which is the Willoughby track, which is an hour north of Benalla. So it's actually pretty close to the Winton track. It's sort of like a small high-speed ring, except it misses the second little drop on the bottom of it. They have an 8 mile drag strip, and then they run speedway cars on it, but they turn left and right, and they have like FC Holdens with Turbo 2Js. They're really weird. I don't know where else they race other than at their own facility. I drove there a couple of years ago. Somebody knew somebody. And got a bunch of us to get some track time there, and we went and thrashed for a day. And then there's been a couple of other instances where people have had it for a day, some private hires and stuff like that. And I believe, I'm not too sure whether it's the car club that has the track or a car club out of Albury, Wodonga that's separate to it, has now got into a position where they can run some drift events there. But every time somebody goes up there, they always get the same feedback from the track that, oh, yeah, no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to get more drift events going on, and then nothing ever comes about it. I remember chasing them up like a year later to see, what the story is. Are there going to be more events? Have you got rid of the wall that you were concerned about? And none of that had happened yet. So, you probably couldn't run a VicDrift round there because when VicDrift puts something on, they get such a massive amount of entrants. But for guys running smaller stuff, that is an affordable way to get out there and do it. But other than that, that's it as far as tracks is concerned. There's Sandown, but Sandown is normally just Driver Dynamics run some sort of days there, but they're normally defensive driver course sort of things. So not proper sort of drifting events. And I'm not too sure how much of that's on the track. It's normally more in the parking lot. But that's extremely expensive, massive noise restrictions now that everybody decided to build a house next to a racetrack and complain about it.
There's big noise restrictions there too, I'm pretty sure, right?
Fill expensive and really fast. I don't know if anybody's really ever drifted that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's much in the way of drift sections.
Don't think you're allowed to because they want
you're not allowed to.
They're allowed as a drift event,
But even then, I don't think there's much in the way of. You could probably run it. I guess there would be a Pukekohe style section if you ran sort of down the hill into that little left-right. But that's about all.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
That's all you could sort of do. But then you look at the damage that the V8 supercars sort of leave that track within that section. Man, I wouldn't want to be chucking a drift car down that hill and ending up in the grass.
One other one, I saw something on their website for it, and I think it was up Mildura Way or something like that. At a drag strip there, they used part of a service road and they had a drift thing. It would have been really basic, but again, it's another opportunity to get out and drive, so that's good. And then other than that...
Yeah, did you mention Shepparton?
At...
Decca.
So, Decca...
Is that closed yet?
VicDrift used to run their drift skills at Decca, and then Decca changed ownerships, and I think things got more difficult. I believe SAU, the Skyline Australia Club, might still stay out there. It's more of a motorcana or sort of a fun day thing where people skid it a little bit. It's not a drift event per se, but it is somewhere where you could go out and have a little bit of fun. There's a couple of fun stories out of there. People done silly things where they shouldn't have, and there's suddenly there's a tree or they end up in a ditch and things like that. But,
that's on a small track. Yeah, because I've been out there and the houses are right next to that track.
I remember going years and years ago for a Spring Nats event, and it was in a paddock and there was nothing around. You drove out of town through a paddock, and then the town just that was the direction it grew, unfortunately, which sucks. But that's the way it is. That's the way it seems to happen everywhere. Even Calder Park. House is right up to Calder Park, but you're not going to get rid of those tyres and asbestos, so you might as well keep running cars there.
Okay.
Department of Housing.
The other thing was we recently saw, and I've probably seen some videos as well. There's another sort of, it looks like a go-kart track that. So the most recent video we saw was of the R31 and the Mercedes.
That came out last week. So that is Took karts in South Morang. So a bunch of us drifters used to go out there and drift. Like with go-karts, we'd go out. If you drive through the dirt, the tyres are nice and cold and sort of dirty, and then you can really throw it in on the next corner, and it's a lot of fun in the rain. And then, so I believe the situation there is it's son of the track owner or close family friend of the track owner is the one that has the in there for drift events there, and then it's purely invite only from there. So it's not like Finks Track,
Archerfield,
where it's a go-kart. Yeah, it's not like Archie. Like what Archie used to be had this hire carts, and then on one night a week they'd go and run drift events. It's you've got to be on the in there to be able to get out there and have a drive. And they run it the reverse direction to what you'd run the go-karts. I'd imagine they probably have a slow section up the front straight as well, because that's where all the hire carts are and all the rest. So
yeah, Daniel
Chopper just said that the go-kart track's been sold. So he's one of the drivers that had driven there. He and people were giving him a hard time. Oh, where was our invite? Whatever else? He's like, well, you got to understand. Chopper was invited to be there. It's not. He doesn't have the right to go and invite others. But it's since changed owners. It seems. So I'm not too sure how old that footage of the AMG was.
It could be,
whether whether the new owner's more open to it, I'm not sure.
Or it could be just old footage. Not sure. But it was pretty cool because I remember seeing R31 wagon. What's his name?
Yeah, Jason Farron's driven there. Groomer there. Bling Designs, he was out there as well for one. I don't know if that was whether VicDrift had some sort of involvement in that in the cars that turned up to that one. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It looked cool though. That was a few years ago when I saw that video.
Yeah, that would have been at least a year, if not 2 years ago.
Yeah. So, okay.
All right. So let's.
Yeah.
Benny Olsen's come up with a question for you, Mitch. What's the next car going to be, and do you regret selling the Celica? To him.
Yeah, he's the new. Actually, well, no. It's his missus' car. It's not his car. I think he's the only one that's driven it in an event yet. But yeah, he was the lucky purchaser of that car. Actually, tandem with Benny. Maybe might have been the first Calder DCI I did. He had his blue Sprinter there, 4-age. And then, when it popped up for sale, he messaged me and was like, I've loved that car from way back when. I really want it. And the first bloke that messaged me was wasting my time. So, yeah, the opportunity went to Benny on that one. Do I regret it? I hadn't used it for a solid year, and I don't see myself having the opportunity to use it again coming soon. And I feel like I did everything I could with that car. So it always had super low power. Like I said, I did coilovers, welder, diff, and exhaust first, and then I did some knuckles, and then I progressively changed things that they needed. Each time I went to an event, I'd write down a list of everything that sucked with the car, and then those are the things that I'd modify for the next one. So I didn't just go out and, I want this and I want that and want whatever else. I drove it each time, saw where it was lacking, and improved that point. And I drove it for 3 or 4 years before the lack of power became an issue, before I'd sort of feel that I'd surpassed what was available. Similarly, with that car, the semi-trailing rear suspension is limited in adjustability. I couldn't lower the car, or I'd just gain camber and have tow issues and whatever else. So I feel like I did everything that I could with that car. And similarly, I don't want to be defined by that car. So I do want to get something else. What that'll be, I don't know. My mind changes every day. What
have you been thinking so far?
What have I been thinking so far? RX-8s are cheap.
Okay. Just get a dirty 33 and just be done.
I've contemplated it, but I don't really feel like having my car nicked. So that sort of pushes that out. Plus, cops would jump all over that. There's I live on the side of Mount Dandenong, and there's a couple of street lights that are really good to inspect. So I'd love something that's a bit more incognito for that. I've considered MX5s just because it's sort of it's
when you go to the hairdresser, it fits in, or
power, lightweight, something that you drive aggressively and throw. However, for streetlight inspections, low power, and that sort of commitment takes a bit more balls and is a bit more dangerous. So some more power would make it.
No, it's fine. MX5s are awesome cars. I've driven them and they're so well balanced. They're amazing. They're only just the gearbox or the drive line just seems to break very easily. So diffs, boxes and stuff.
The diffs in the NA6s are a weak point, but later on they got stronger. Confirming that I fit in one is definitely a necessity. I have sat in one before, but that was full track car, cage, and all the rest. So I need to find a simpler one and see how that works. Otherwise, an AU Falcon Ute is definitely a thing, and it was a contemplation prior to the AU craze that started at Rayleigh. Simply because 4-litre manual Ute, rear wheel drive, I can fit tires and stuff in it. I can sleep in the back if I need, and I mean, other than the pillar between the door and the tub, everything's replaceable if it gets damaged. You can take a tub off and swap a tub out. You can swap quarter panels, doors, and stuff like that. So just that modular construction is sort of got some things going for it. But, yeah, I don't know.
People are throwing suggestions. Connor's thrown out, you should get a Prelude. Shoulders has thrown out, you should get a 350. And Connor's also thrown out, you should get an S2000.
Right. Have you managed to steal it away from Lucy much? I know that that's raved about quite a bit in the States at the moment. A couple of those YouTubers are getting those 350Z, and Daniel Hollands in SA has recently sold up a couple of his cars, and he's real keen to get one as a simple skidder. So S2000s are out of my price range. Prelude, hell no.
I think 350s are probably out of your price range too.
A Delica, no, I'm not going to buy a Delica.
We've looked at 350Z as well.
Hell, but I'm not going to get a Delica. Sorry, What was that, AG?
We also looked at 350Zs as well because apparently they're very popular in Japan as beginner cars. They've got very good power and their drive line's quite strong. I think in the States as well they're a lot cheaper than here. They're probably half or maybe even a third of the price they are here.
Everything's sold in such a greater volume in the States.
So. But it's also, I think they've also been proven that as a base untouched, they're a great beginner car or just a great practice car. But when you're trying to develop them into much more, they're just not a competitive chassis. Like you would have expected to see it.
The end is stock, but you try and do it up. I've seen all those big billet front ends they have to put in them, the holes to the knuckle and the A-arms and all that sort of stuff seems a bit much like a McPherson strut.
Don't they have...
you got to remember... Go, EG?
Yeah, don't they have YSAB kits for 3...
Yeah, the 350s, 370s. Yeah, they do. But again, for some reason...
YSAB really isn't my style. And you've got to have the power to suit that as well.
Yeah, they've got good power from what everyone's saying. I really want to drive one. But I can't get my hands on... Go up to Archie
and speak to Luke.
IS 200 / 300. I don't think I'd luck into a manual swap as easily as Sean did with an IS 300. I've seriously contemplated an IS 200, actually. I've driven one before. Everybody talks down them being sluggish, but, considering what I came out of, driving an IS 200, it had some goes. So I feel that they're a potential.
Daniel said that she crashed it on the weekend skidding.
Checking streetlights. They do that often.
Explains why they're very good at changing light bulbs. And Connor's doing some research, and he said, you can find them on Craigslist for under $4,000 in the States. So that explains, I guess... And this is a point that Luke tends to make and I guess even the Japanese tend to make, is you buy what you can get readily available for parts and that's cheap. And I guess for us here, what was cheap and is still semi-cheap is still doing your S chassis and your R chassis, where over in the States, your Z's is your next best option, is your best option really. And people are sort of moving away from them now and looking more towards your Mustangs and Corvettes and things like that already have the good line. Any more questions?
From a while back from Sean Power saying, do you think drivers' briefings should be posted/streamed to help the crowd for what to look for? Yes, I believe it would be good, but I'd have to sort of fix my mannerisms a bit if they're going to stream these ones and make sure I'm not poking fun at people and sort of have to up that professionalism that little bit more. It's fun to have a joke around, but sometimes stuff gets sidetracked. So you'd almost have to word up the drivers to the fact that it's going to be streamed first and then get into the briefing. So
yeah, and my other issue with the briefing thing is if there's a briefing done and then clarification goes out afterwards because something's changed or been misunderstood, then that information does. Yeah, and then it just starts to get really messy, which can be not so good for the sport. I think the commentators need to be in drivers' briefing, and then sort of happened.
And your spotter needs to be in drivers' briefing.
Yeah,
and your brother and your cousin who comes up telling you how great a job you did when they have no idea what's being asked of.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I'm talking more from a crowd point of view. It's important that your commentators, and this isn't a go at you, you're good with this, but just making sure that the people who are feeding the information, who are those middlemen, are feeding the right information through or have the proper understanding of what's happening. I think can be very important for that sort of situation, I guess. So yeah, I wouldn't be a huge fan of the live stream thing purely. Maybe something like an FD that's a well-oiled machine, it might work. But for I guess where we are currently, I could just see it causing more drama than it's worth.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the early mornings at DCA, everybody's a bit of a struggle, and so I sort of enjoy the way that they are now. They're laid back, but they still convey everything necessary. And then sort of back where we were before, talking about cars and stuff, as far as what's cheap. That's why I bought the Sleeker. It's what was cheap. Like, I get blown away at what people spend on KE70s. I've made a lot of money. I've done all right picking up KE70s cheap and then selling them a bit more to some 17-year-old who's not going to do shit with it. But like Celica's, people wanted like $300 for a taillight, so I'd go buy a whole car for $200, and that's why you end up with 5 of them in your shed at one point. But yeah, doing stuff as cheap as possible. I had so many people come up to me, they'll see me out driving the Sleeker, they'll come up and see me in the pits, and they're like, oh, I've got one of these, but I've pulled the motor out because I'm putting in an LS1, a 2JZ, an SR, or whatever else, and they're in the shed forever building that car, and they're like, what do you got in it? And I'm like, I've got a 22R with 300,000 Ks on it. Just get out and drive it and worry about fixing up when you've surpassed your skill. And like, but then again, that comes back to what I said earlier. Everybody has their different thing, and some people are into building a car, so that's their thing. But you're not, seat time beats all is what it comes down to. And people spend more in a year or on a set of wheels or whatever than I spent in 5 years. 4 years of drifting. Like I ran on scrappies. Like my front tires were scrappies. I'd go through my scrappy pile and I'd pick out the ones with the cool looking tread, and they went on the front.
Yeah, but any more than that, and you wouldn't have spun them.
No, that's on the front. I mean, on the rear, yeah. Well, I think 195s were pushing it. 165s were magic, but they didn't last long. They'd blow pretty quick. I mean, one of the things, I get as many rims as I could and mount all my tires beforehand so that I wouldn't have to get tires changed to the track because that cost money. I put myself in the ER with tire levers. I was trying to take a tire off the bead, and the levers sprung off and bounced off my forehead and cut my skull open. So that was a good introduction in the early days. I have built my own tire machine of sorts. There was a big air cylinder that I was throwing out at work that I turned into a bead breaker, and then I just made a little tire changing stand. But I also became mates with somebody with a tire shop, which was handy for a while. And I mean, at the moment, I've got the DCA tire changer, and I don't have a bloody car to use it with.
You sound like a Victorian member of Team Red Stage.
We've got tire machines.
Everything everything was on the cheap with that car. I didn't have much money to throw at it, and I still don't. Like with whatever I decide to go with next, it's still going to be budget. Like part of what I wanted to do with getting rid of that car was to move away from 14-inch tires because they're difficult to come by. And the next step is I'm either going to go to 15-inch tires with the likes of the AU Falcon, or I'm going to go to 13-inch tires on an MX-5 because they're half price at Centre Road Wreckers.
Fair call, and I think this is things that people don't think about when they're doing it. But I think there has been a bit of a shift back now again to just getting back out and actually getting track time. I think people are spending less and less worrying about going too crazy because they've realized once you go too crazy that everything gets more expensive. It's not that it gets more reliable, it just gets more expensive. Yeah, my car doesn't break because I got a sequential box, winter's quick change, but hey, crap, I need to own a semi-trailer because I've got to bring 40 tires to get through half a day of driving. So you're getting tire prices up here.
Mitch, have you thought of making more money? Yeah, I'm going to start growing meth.
You're going to start growing meth. I think your science is flawed there, but I wish you on your endeavors.
Hey, I'll take whatever you say, man. Like, you're the guy with the background in ice, so.
Shh.
Speaking of you, how's Initial D coming along?
I haven't leave me alone. I haven't watched another episode yet. I smashed through Far Cry in 4 days, all right? It's the first time I haven't had to work, and I smashed through Far Cry.
That's priorities like completely wrong. You'll become so much better of a drifter after you watch that series. You've watched it, haven't you, Mitch? Man, how far have you watched it?
Now, in Gerg's defense, I didn't watch it early on. I'd already been drifting before I went to watching it.
Okay.
But I did watch the subbed and not the dubbed version. But yeah, I've watched it all the way through. So when the last I was itching for when the last season came out. Yep. and was watching each of those episodes as soon as I could as they came through. So I've seen it right the way through, but I haven't rewatched it religiously or anything like that. But it's something that I watched.
I feel like I've been stitched up because it was all about cars, and now I'm at a point in the series where it's all about girls. So,
but girls are part of cars.
Learning how to be a lone wolf drifter.
Yeah, it gets too difficult at that stage. But yeah, I need to get back in and watch the rest of it. I understand. And thank you for bringing that up. It means a lot to me.
That's all right. I'll check in with you next week and see how you're going. I had to keep you to account last week as well.
You guys are so mean to me. I think that's the Lonely Drifters. Yes, thanks, Connor. So I think that's sort of us covered on most of this.
Unless you want to open it up to questions. I'm not too sure how many we might have missed earlier on.
I think we're pretty covered on. We kept a bit of an eye on it, and EG threw it to questions a while ago, and when EG threw that, that's when we got the question about your seller's regret.
I don't regret that yet. The last time I drove it, it was breaking down and had issues. And then I eventually figured out I'd gone too cold of a heat range in the plugs, and I put those plugs back in it, and all of a sudden it came back to life. I also took the carbs off and I put the fuel injection back on, trying to troubleshoot that. And all of a sudden it was the car that it always used to be. The great thing about that car is I never had to open the bonnet all weekend. I just go out and drive and just keep changing tires. And by the time I sold it, it was actually running all right again.
I need a car like that.
Well, you can get one for $700 on eBay or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Oh, the AU? Oh, yeah, here's one.
No, the first one.
Yeah, we have a group chat.
I bought a handful later, and I came to realize I messed up a pretty nice car because all the ones I bought later had a lot more rot in them and a lot more issues with them, and that one was probably the nicest one I had. And luckily, we had the Club Reg come in Victoria, and I got it on the road for a little bit as well.
Yeah, cool.
Didn't drive it a massive amount, but I got another one that I had for a little bit as a street car with just a welded diff and knuckles, just to have a little bit of fun. So I definitely would like a I can't really bring myself to spend all day changing tires and stuff again at a track. I'm too old for that shit. I want something.
You'll be all right. I think we're gonna have to start to wrap it up now because I can see Greg covering his yawns quite well. He's he normally gets up quite early in the morning to do his work, so he probably has to get to bed.
To get on the ice.
You're probably past your bedtime, aren't you?
Yeah, that ice really hurts your sleeping pattern, doesn't it?
Being on the ice totally messes with my sleeping patterns. Yeah, I'm an hour past bedtime, but that's okay.
I don't think Greg expected someone on the show that was going to out-talk him.
Nah, this is perfect. It gives me a bloody break. I guess before we totally wrap up, Robbie Bolger, for anybody who's been in the scene long enough, the guy who drove the Monaro, won Drift Australia, is finally actually come out and admitted to the fact that he was selling stolen engines and gearboxes from Holden, and yeah.
So we don't have to say allegedly anymore.
Yeah,
now actually he did it.
And yeah, basically now they're just waiting on a
sentence.
On a sentencing date, and yeah, he's looking at potentially 20 years for his involvement in all that. So yeah, kids, don't steal motors from your sponsors and sell them. That's just
all right. We
not
got
a good
rid of
idea.
in Australia. There's no one to steal them from now.
That is a fair point. But even if people are giving you parts, just don't steal from them. It's just not a good idea.
Well, he wasn't stealing from his supplier. There's more to it than that. He wasn't.
Yeah. I know, but yeah, it's just interesting that allegedly. That the engines were obsolete, but then disappeared. Yet people are still running them. All right, so I think, well, this was our trial of going live with 3 people and not just the 2 like we tried last week. We are sort of working through trying some different things. What we're wanting to probably do from next week, hopefully, is to jump away from the Facebook Live and try and use YouTube Live, just because it keeps us better track of stats and all that sort of stuff. So what we will try and get better at is, this was sort of queued up during our chat last week, and then we didn't really act upon it until today, and I was going to put up last night that we're going to be live today, and then I forgot. So we will try and get on top of that. I keep saying that, but eventually we will. We keep doing the episodes, which I'm still proud of, but hopefully we'll get better on the other side of it. What's that, sorry?
11? This is number 11, isn't it?
Yeah, this is number 11. And yeah, so hopefully next week we're going to try and go live via YouTube, and we'll share that link up on Facebook, but just sort of try and expect it at around 8 o'clock on Wednesday. So if you're somebody who bothers to listen to us regularly, jump over to the YouTube channel and have a look at that. The last week's replay is up on there as well, but I know most people will have just clicked on it on Facebook, but that's why we want to try and bump the traffic across there. We don't expect that our YouTube channel will necessarily ever monetize. That's not the reason we're sort of moving it there. It just gives us a better track of stats. So if we ever need to use those stats to try and help, if anybody wants to sponsor us or do anything like that for the show, we have numbers where Facebook, I think last week's video, we've ended up with, I can look it up now, but I think over 1,000 views, but those views could be 30 seconds, where at least YouTube can tell me that people literally only did watch for 30 seconds. So, yeah. Thank you, Mitch, for coming on. You said you're waiting by the phone, and you were literally waiting by the phone. So
I don't have a life.
Appreciate you doing this for us. And yeah, next week, I'm not sure what the plan is for next week, but FD will have been on, VicDrift will have been on.
Oh yeah, I know you'd like to talk about FD. I will try and watch it this weekend as well. I'm working actually this weekend, so I'll try and make some time to watch it if I can, and then I can tell you how bad it is.
And I think as much as we try and keep it on the Aussie stuff, I think it'll be interesting to do a bit of a comparison between the first round of D1 and the first round of FD, and just sort of have a pick about it, and just where each series is going and its relevance to other places on the planet, and yeah, maybe we'll try and get somebody else on. Maybe we'll have Mitch back. We'll try and work out something during the week as to what we do with that.
I've got to keep you updated on how VicDrift goes on the weekend anyway. So
yeah, it might be worth potentially having him back again, but we shall see.
We'll get rid of EG doesn't want to talk about FD, so you and I, we can just talk about FD for.
No, I can talk about FD. I can talk about, I guess you'd say, the negative side of FD, but it's things that I think don't actually promote drifting. So,
well, watch this weekend, see how it goes, and then we'll see where we go from there. But yeah,
I'm just saying the competition, like the drivers. I like the drivers. The drivers, like the drivers that we've met so far, they're really cool. And when they come over to Australia, they drive awesome. So they drive really well. But it's just when they're over there and the competition requirements over there, I don't like those.
Just sit, watch this weekend,
or the criteria.
Sorry.
Do you feel that it's the tracks that create the situation that you don't enjoy? Or do you feel it's the criteria?
We're starting a whole nother conversation.
Okay,
we're going to end up like with a 15.
And then
Greg, we're going to save this.
And then
we're just going to save it.
This one, as well as what is drifting. Like, we're still getting comments about people wanting to have their input. So
we're
definitely a lot of people that want to get involved with that sort of thing. Those topics anyway.
Yeah. So we will end it here. So thank you, Mitch. Thank you, EG. Awkward high five. I don't know what's going on.
I'm not getting involved in this.
Oh yeah, you're telling us to kill. Yeah, he's been telling us to kill the high five.
Okay.
And yeah, well, that was one way to get rid of him. And yeah, look, we're looking forward to keeping this going, and thanks for listening. This will still be up on the Facebook page, and it'll pop up on the YouTube page. Share it if you can. I know a bit of an odd episode, but interesting to get Mitch on, and I'm sure we'll have Mitch on definitely again in the future. No, I said it was an odd episode because we're a bit all over the place. EG gets funny when we go on adventures in different places that he doesn't expect it to go. EG likes his structure, but I like it when we just sort of freestyle it. But yeah, all right. Thanks for listening, guys.
All right,
EG,
thank you very much.
Kill the stream. Thank you.
All right, hang on. I'll kill the stream. See you guys. Hang on. Let me wait.
You haven't killed it.
Hang on. If you end this video. Okay, end.